She was the quietest nurse on the floor. Everyone said so. She never raised her voice, never argued, never looked anyone in the eye for longer than a second. They called her Nurse Rivera. That wasn't her real name. Nobody knew that 6 years ago, she'd carried a dying man through mortar fire on her back. Nobody knew that her hands, the ones that trembled when Dr. Holloway raised his voice, had once held pressure on a bleeding artery for 11 straight hours in a country she was never allowed to name. Then a stranger was wheeled into her ER with a bullet in his chest and a single word on his lips. That word was about to tear her whole disguise apart. Before we go further, welcome to Silent Heroes. If you're watching this at 2 a.m. like half our community, drop a comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if you think you know what that word was, guess in the comments. Now, subscribe, because you do not want to miss where this goes. Back to the story. Riverside General sat on the edge of a mid-sized city, the kind of hospital that saw car wrecks and heart attacks, not war wounds. Its halls smelled like bleach and old coffee. Its fluorescent lights buzzed just a little too loud. Rivera had worked there for 3 years. She wore her dark hair in the same low bun every shift. She kept her sleeves down, even in July, because of the scars underneath. She spoke only when spoken to. She had learned the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small meant safe. Small meant no one asked questions about the tattoo she'd had removed, badly, on her left forearm. Small meant no one noticed the way her eyes swept every room for exits the second she walked in. Dr. Marcus Holloway ran the ER like it was his personal kingdom. He was tall, silver-templed, always dressed a half-step too sharp for a hospital. He liked being watched. He liked being right, even when he wasn't. Rivera. He'd say her fake name like it was something distasteful in his mouth. I don't pay you to think. I pay you to follow orders. He said it in front of patients, in front of interns, in front of anyone who'd listen. She never answered back. Not once. Old Mr. Delgado, a diabetic regular who'd been coming in for foot ulcers for 2 years, was the only one who ever looked at her twice. You're not scared of him, he told her once, while she changed his bandage with hands that barely shook. You're scared of something a lot bigger than him. I've seen that look before. On my brother. After Vietnam. She didn't answer that either. But something in her chest cracked, just slightly, and she never forgot he'd said it. It was a Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m., when the doors burst open. GSW to the chest. Male, 30s, unresponsive. The gurney came in fast, blood soaking through a makeshift dressing, a paramedic shouting vitals nobody could quite keep up with. Holloway took charge instantly, loud and confident. Start a line, get me imaging, someone page surgery. He was already wrong. Rivera saw it in 4 seconds flat. The patient's neck veins were distended. His breath sounds were unequal, faint on the left. His blood pressure was dropping despite fluids running wide open. Tension pneumothorax. Not just a chest wound. A collapsing lung compressing the heart itself, and if nobody acted in the next 90 seconds, his heart would stop from the pressure alone. Holloway was ordering a chest X-ray. There wasn't time for a chest X-ray. Then the patient's eyes fluttered open, delirious, reaching for her sleeve. And he said it. Ghost. Is that you? Ghost, I need extraction. The word hit the room like a detonation. Every head turned toward her. Holloway's face twisted. What did he just call you? Rivera said nothing. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes dropped to the floor, the old, practiced instinct, disappear, go small, don't be seen. Answer me, Holloway snapped. Do you know this patient? Silence. The kind of silence that says more than any confession could. The monitor screamed a warning. Oxygen crashing. Heart rate spiking, then faltering. And something in her simply stopped hiding. Her hands stopped shaking. She stepped forward, and for the first time in 3 years, her spine straightened all the way, like a rope finally cut free of its knot. 14-gauge needle. Second intercostal space, midclavicular line. Now, her voice wasn't a nurse's voice anymore. It was flat, fast, absolute. A voice built for chaos. A nearby tech froze, needle in hand, uncertain. Rivera took it from him without asking. "This is a tension pneumothorax," she said, and for a moment, her tone shifted, clear and instructive, like she was teaching a room full of people who needed to understand exactly why every second mattered. Air was trapping itself inside his chest cavity with nowhere to escape, crushing his lung and pressing sideways on his heart, cutting off blood flow entirely. Without immediate decompression, his heart would stop in under 2 minutes, and no amount of fluids or CPR would fix a mechanical problem that only a needle could solve. "You are not authorized," Holloway started. She wasn't listening anymore. She found the space between his ribs with 2 fingers, no hesitation, and drove the needle in. A hiss of air. Immediate. Audible. The patient's oxygen numbers began climbing on the monitor. His color returned, faint pink chasing away the gray. The room went dead silent, except for the steady, strengthening beep of a heartbeat that, seconds ago, had nearly stopped for good. Holloway stood frozen, exposed in front of a room full of witnesses, for the first time in his career visibly, unmistakably wrong. Rivera looked down at the man on the table. Recognition flickered behind her eyes. She knew exactly who he was. And she knew this was only the beginning. Holloway's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. "You are suspended. Effective immediately." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the monitor, steady now, counting out a heartbeat that shouldn't have still been there. "You performed an unauthorized procedure," he said, louder now, playing to the room instead of to her. "You could have killed him. Security, escort her out." Rivera didn't flinch. She looked down at the man on the table, still fighting for consciousness, still hers to save. "No," she said. "I am just done hiding." 2 security guards hesitated at the doorway. Even they could see the numbers on that monitor. Even they could see whose hands had put them there. A crowd had gathered by then, nurses, techs, a resident with his phone half raised before he thought better of it. Nobody said a word in Holloway's defense. By 6 o'clock in the morning, the story had already made its way through every break room in the hospital. At 6:15, 3 men in plain dark coats walked through the ER doors like they owned the building. The one in front had a gray crew cut and eyes that had clearly seen more than any hospital corridor could show him. He stopped in front of Rivera and did something no one in that building had ever done. He saluted her. "Sergeant First Class Elena Vasquez," he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Combat Medic, 75th Ranger Regiment. Silver Star. Bronze Star with Valor. 3 tours. 14 confirmed field extractions under direct fire." He turned to Holloway, whose face had gone the color of the tile floor. Call sign, Ghost. Because she was the last person a dying man ever saw, and the last thing he'd remember was that she never left. The room didn't breathe. Holloway tried to recover, tried to find his footing. "This is a civilian hospital. Whatever she did in the military doesn't authorize her to." "She did her job," the officer cut in, flat and final. Better than the man screaming about authorization while a patient's heart nearly stopped in front of him. Holloway's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time, he had no one left to blame. It was Mr. Delgado, wheeled in for his weekly check, who spoke into the silence that followed. "I knew it," he said, smiling faintly at Rivera. "I told you I'd seen that look before." She almost smiled back. Almost. The real unraveling started 2 days later, when hospital administration pulled Holloway's records during the review of the incident. What they found had nothing to do with medicine. Holloway had been quietly funneling patients into an unapproved clinical trial, one funded by a pharmaceutical rep he'd been meeting privately for 18 months. Falsified consent forms. Altered charts. A payment trail that led straight to an offshore account with his name on it. The wounded man Rivera had saved that night wasn't a random gunshot victim. He'd been a whistleblower, Someone who'd found out about the trial and tried to go to the authorities. Someone had made sure he never got the chance. Holloway had known exactly who was coming through those doors. He'd been stalling on purpose, hoping the delay would finish what the bullet started. When hospital security came to escort him out for good, he didn't go quietly. He grabbed a scalpel from a nearby tray and lunged, not at security, but at the patient's bed, at the one witness who could put him away for good. Rivera moved before anyone else even registered what was happening. Years of instinct, the kind that never fully leaves a person, took over completely. She caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and had him on the floor, disarmed, in under 3 seconds. The scalpel skittered harmlessly across the tile. "Don't," she said quietly. "I've disarmed better men than you in worse places." Security cuffed him seconds later. He didn't say another word. Back at the bedside, the patient's vitals dipped hard in the chaos, oxygen crashing, pressure sliding. 90/60. Falling. Sats at 88. "He's crashing. I've got him." Rivera's hands were already moving, steady, sure, guiding a line, calling out numbers like she'd done it 1,000 times in far worse conditions. Somewhere behind her calm voice was the memory of another man, another table, another set of numbers she hadn't been fast enough to fix. This time she was. Pressures climbing. 98/64. 96% Saturday. "He's stabilizing." "Got it," she said quietly. "He has a chance." Holloway was formally arrested 3 weeks later. He lost his medical license permanently. The clinical trial was shut down, and the hospital opened an independent review board named, at the insistence of the surviving whistleblower, in honor of the standard Rivera had set that night. Rivera was offered her old rank civilian equivalent, a position she never expected. Director of a newly formed trauma and battlefield medicine training program, teaching ER staff the exact techniques that had saved a man's life when there was no time left to wait for permission. She kept the name Rivera. She didn't need to hide anymore, but some names become part of you either way. Mr. Delgado was there on her first day teaching, sitting in the back row, arms crossed, grinning like he'd known all along. "Ghost," he said, "looks good on you too." For the first time in 6 years, she let herself smile all the way. She had spent years believing she had to choose, the medic or the ghost, the soldier or the nurse, hide everything or lose everything. But the strongest people aren't the ones who bury who they are. They're the ones who finally stop. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Heroes, and tell us in the comments. Have you ever known someone who was hiding something far bigger than anyone realized? Our next story is already waiting. The end.